Welcome back everybody. In this episode, I show the Jayco Caravan owners how you can join the cool group, which are the Jayco camper trailer owners, with these nifty new lights from 3DprintRV. That's right, we with the camper trailers have had this option for quite some time now, but this is now available for the Jayco Caravans as well. So I got a hold of one of these from Royce over at 3DprintRV, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to install onto the side of your caravan. And now, why would you want to install one of these? That's because it's a tricolour light with a motion sensing feature. That's right, it's got the three colours, so you've got your bright light, you've got your all-important orange light, and you've got a nice subtle warm light as well. And not only is it motion sensing, but it's also dimming as well. It integrates with the lighting inside. It's dead easy to install, so come along as we show you how. Now, Royce over at 3DprintRV is well known for all his fridge fan mods and 3D printed bits and pieces and stuff like that. Now, last year he came out with this same light that converted onto the Jayco camper trailers. It was a really great feature because the lights on the side of the camper trailers are starkingly bright. So being able to change to even a dimming function, but having this orange light was a really good thing there. Now, I did actually take some measurements, but I never sent them to him. But on the side, he's also come up with a version that will retrofit onto the side of the Jayco Caravans. So this will definitely apply to the Journeys, the all-terrains, most likely the Expanders, Starcraft and Silverline models that have the standard same Narva light that we had fitted to our Journey here, which I'll show you in 2 seconds once we go through the install process. So if you're seeing this and think, wow, that's pretty cool, or you've watched to the end of the video and you really want one, go and check out all the products at 3dprintrv.com. Royce is a legend. He does a lot of product development and spends a lot of time in coming up with products just like this that solve a number of problems. The fact that you can actually change all the colorways and have the motion sensing on it is a really big thing. So let's get into how it's installed, starting with removing the old light fixture. Now, the first and obvious step is to make sure your existing light actually works. That ensures the wiring running all the way through is intact and ready to roll. So double check to make sure it hasn't stopped working somewhere along the line. And if you've got one of these Jayco Caravans with the remote mounted light switches, the batteries in them do go flat. So firstly, if you do have an issue with the lights not turning on, double check the battery hasn't gone flat in the back of that remote, replace that, and then do a double check again, because generally the wiring's pretty good, you don't have to worry about it. So now that we know this light works, I've turned it off and I've also isolated the battery so there's no power coming through to this light fixture itself. The next task is simply removing this black cover to expose the light fixture underneath. Now, you will have seen that I just quickly ran a sharp knife blade around the outside just to release the sealant. There'll be sealant all the way around and underneath this light fixture based on our Jayco Swan experience. You'll see there's 3 tabs, one in here, one on the top and the other one on the opposite side. What I've done is I've just gotten a really small flat blade screwdriver and I've pushed the tab in on the bottom side here. Now, in my case, it's all full of sealant behind there, but I've then been able to get this same screwdriver in through the side here and I could just lever this up. And then you'll find that this cover is still stuck on with a tiny bit of sealant around the outside. And then it's just a simple case of popping this off, and that exposes the actual light assembly underneath. So that's the first stage done. It's not too bad. You might actually break this cover if you force it too much and try to get it off. You can see a little bit of sealant's come out here and there's sealant all in behind where these tabs go in. And that means this cover's not going to come flying off while you're driving down the road. So that's a good thing. But when you're retrofitting a light, it's something you just need to go through to pull it apart. But hopefully this video will help you out. And any mistakes I make in here, I'm going to show you as part of this video so that you don't do the same. So I'll quickly remove these screws, then we can get into plying this light fixture off and seeing what's underneath. Now keep these 2 screws we just removed in a safe place because we'll use them to put the new light fixture on in one of the final steps of the installation. One thing I would do is actually clean off all the old silicone and sealant that might be stuck on them so they're fresh and ready to go. Now to remove the light fixture itself, I like to have an adjustable blade so you can move it in and out to help cut around the outside surface of the light fixture itself. You want to be extremely careful you don't scratch the outside wall of the Caravan that you're removing this light from. The other thing that is really handy, and we found that in the Jayco Swan video, is one of these paint scrapers. So you can put it underneath and lever this light fixture off, because the one thing you don't want to do is shove a blade in too far and cut the wiring. We didn't do that, but the blade is really helpful in actually levering this light fixture off, given that it's pretty well sealed down into place. And then the other thing I like to have is this straight blade in a Kincrome scraper. And it's really handy just to clean up the outside surface and get it all ready to put the new light fixture on. So what we'll do now is we'll continue running the blade through. It feels like, actually, in my case, it feels like I should be able to just wiggle this out. So I cut around this to remove the outside black cover, but if I twist this, I can actually get it off. So we won't need any of these at this point. I'll just quickly pull it off and I'll show you what's in behind. So in the case of the Caravans, you'll probably find there's not that much sealant. Most of the sealant is focused around the hole or the penetration where the wiring comes out. And you'll see, in our case, we've got a white and a blue. The white goes to the black on the light fixture, and the blue, just for reference, goes to the red. It goes down inside the wall of the Caravan, so you want to release these connectors and you want to make sure you don't lose that wiring down into the wall of the Caravan. But once you actually remove the light, it's just a simple case of getting all this silicone off. I tend to work from the outside in so that you don't go through and scratch the outside surface. If you do put a few nicks on the wall, it's hidden behind the new light fixture because it's got the same footprint as the existing Jayco one. So just get some wire cutters and cut these wires off. Now we can safely remove the light fixture itself. And now we'll just tidy up all this excess silicone that's left on the outside. Now I've got a brand new blade on this. And as I've said in a number of my videos, if this is gouging in and causing you some drama on the finished surface of your Caravan or camper trailer, you can often just slide it backwards just to peel the silicone back. But I'm going to start in the middle so I can sort of blunt it and dull it down a little bit, and then I'll start running around the outside. But you want to get as much of this silicone off as you possibly can so that your new sealant will bond onto the surface of the van itself and not be contaminated by trying to seal onto the old silicone or sealant that's left on the side of the van. At this point, you also want to order and make sure you've got some neutral cure silicone. Don't use a normal acidic bathroom style silicone that smells like vinegar. You want to make sure you use a neutral cure on anything Caravan or camp trailer related. Just because it's not corrosive, it's a lot better to use, and that is generally the industry standard. So we'll get about cleaning this up and see how we go. And so you can see here, I'm working the blade pretty much from the inside, just with a tiny bit hanging out. And that means I can safely get underneath this, get all the sealant off without having to worry about damaging the exposed finished surface of the wall panel on the outside. You also want to be careful that you don't nick the wires on the way through and strip off some of the insulation. Just be really careful around the wiring so you don't damage it while you're doing this process. So that's the vast majority of the silicone off. I don't want to go any harder on this because I am starting to mark up just the surface over here. One thing I do find with these blades is that if you go in either direction, you generally get a tiny little bit more off. What I will do here is I'll go over this with some isopropyl cleaning alcohol just to clean it all off and get as much of the residual off that I possibly can without damaging the surface on the outside. You don't want to use any aggressive chemicals, even acetone or anything like that, because you don't want to stain the wall of the Caravan underneath where the light fixture is installed by having it all dribble and run down and discolour the panelling underneath. I've also heard of people using a caramel wheel, which is what you use to pull pinstriping and decals and stuff like that off the bodywork of a vehicle. You could potentially do that if you wanted to get a little bit more off, but Generally, that's got most of it off. It wasn't all that hard to do it at all. So now we'll head into the shed. I'll show you about this light fixture, the process, all the little steps we got to do before we head back out, wire this up, and it's ready to roll. All right, so now let's run through what you get as part of the kit from Royce over at 3DprintRV. It's very, very simple and basic, and it won't take very long to run through this at all. Firstly, you get this new updated light fixture. Now, this is the same one that we've had fitted to our Swan for over a year now, and I love it. It works really, really well. It's got a whole heap of different functions that you don't get with your typical Jayco supplied lights, which makes it fantastic. So firstly, this is a tri-colour light. So it means you can run it with a bright white light, a warm light, and the most important orange light that everyone is going to now. Now, the advantage of the orange light, if you're not aware of it, is that stops a lot of the bugs coming in around your outdoor area and generally where you're camping when you're out, especially over the summer months. So that is a really big bonus. Now, the other feature of this, which is another big plus, is that this is a dimmable light switch. So in the case of the camper trailers, they are really, really bright. The Caravans probably aren't so bad because there's a bigger area underneath, and I don't think the light's quite as extreme because it's mounted high, but you can actually dim these down so you can provide that muted light when you're just sitting around and enjoying your trip away. The other really big feature of this, which I think caravan owners in particular will enjoy, as we have with the camper trailers, is that this works as a sensor light. So the first advantage with the sensor light is obviously if someone walks into your campsite while you're asleep and it's at night time, it'll flick the light on, which is a really good deterrent. It's also a bonus in that if you're a light sleeper like me, you'll see the light go on and know someone's sort of mucking around. Could often be an animal, which isn't a bad thing to know about as well, because if you've left your rubbish outside, you can quickly go out and put it away so they're not ripping it apart and disturbing you while you're trying to sleep. Or even worse, you come out in the morning and it's spread around everywhere. Now, what I actually use it for quite a lot is if you need to get up and go to the loo or something like that halfway through the night, the light flicks on when you go out and it'll flick back on when it senses you walking up. Same thing, if you're out catching up with others around different campsites and stuff like that, sun goes down, you don't have to worry about coming back in the dark because as soon as you walk up, it'll sense your movement and flick the light on. So there's a few different advantages with that. So that's basically the light. Now, if you've got an older style Jayco Caravan, these come in white. If you've got a newer style like us that has all the black trims, they now come in black as well. Now to go with this, you have 3DprintRV's mounting plate. So this is the adapter plate that accepts this light and allows you to easily bolt it onto the side of your Caravan. So this is the exact same footprint. It's got the same mounting holes as per the standard lights fitted to most of the Jayco Caravans. So that is a really good thing. If you've got a camper trailer and you're just seeing this video, there is a different adapter plate that goes onto the side of the Jayco camper trailers, like we've got fitted to our Swan, which I'll show you just here. So it's a squarer plate that takes in the footprint of that bright white light that you have sitting on the outside of your camper trailer. Getting back to the Caravans, this is a 3D printed item that's UV stabilised. So even if you've got the white one, it won't go all chalky and fall apart down the track. It might yellow off slightly, but it certainly won't fall apart because Royce is really pedantic about the materials he uses in his 3D printed objects. He does a lot of research, he's got a lot of experience into this sort of stuff, and he picks all the right polymers and all that sort of jazz that goes into making these plates. Particularly when they're mounted outside, you need to make sure that they're printed from the right material so they'll last a test of time. Now, Royce does leave the 3D printed texture on the outside, which is his signature touch, and he's also got the 3DprintRV logo on the bottom of it. Now, if I bring this up a little bit closer, you can see the two holes on the outside. These match up with the existing mounting points of the light fixture itself. You've got this little locating nub that the light actually connects onto when you go to place it onto this adapter plate. Here you've got two other mounting holes. Now they're on an angle and I'll show you this later on. And that's what actually mechanically fixes the light onto the face plate that Royce has developed from 3DprintRV. In the middle here, we've got a hole and that's where we feed our cabling through. So when we assemble the light on, we've got our cabling coming through the rear that we can connect onto the back of the Caravan itself. So it's really quite simple. It's a real neat little product. You can see the 3DprintRV on here and it's got that bit of texture on the front of it. And so essentially what we need to do as part of the next steps is we need to feed the wiring through, which I'll show you in a lot more detail. I'll try to do with one hand so I can do it in one movement here. Seal up a few holes. We bolt this onto the front so that we've got a single assembly, and it sort of sits just like this. So it's pointing down towards you rather than going straight out to the side. And that actually just directs the light down, provides a little bit more focus into areas where you might have a table or something like that. And I think that works pretty well. In the sake of the camper trailers, it means it's not pointing out straight into your face. It's more pointing down to the ground, which is a lot nicer when you're sitting around, you haven't got that glaring light in your face. But if we flip this over, the next step once we go out to the Caravan is to actually connect up the wiring, because this will be all together. So we'll just sit this off to the side, wire it up, which is really, really easy. Now you've got a few different options here. You've got the screw connectors that Jayco use in a lot of their internal fit outs. We had that with our camp trailer as well. Now I did notice when we removed the light fixture just before that ours has butt connectors. So some installations may have butt connectors, and you will find that through the various years of Jayco products that they change things around a little bit. Ours is actually a COVID built van, so who knows what's gone on there, but in its case it's got butt connectors. So if you follow Jayco's lead there, you could use butt connectors to join these back up. However, I much prefer to use these solder splice connectors. Now, we'll use these as part of the installation. The beauty about these is it's a one-stop solution. Slide your wires in from either side and you heat it up with a heat gun. It dissolves the solder and makes a soldered joint. It's got a waterproof band on either end and a heat shrink as well. So it provides a full sealed, solid, soldered connection of your two wired joints, which means it's weather resistant, even though it's tucked down inside the wall. If it does get some moisture on it for any reason, it's not gonna deteriorate or affect the wiring. It's a really nice, neat solution. All you need to do is to provide a little bit of power over, which we'll run a lead over because I haven't got the van plugged in at the moment. And we'll get the heat gun out, bond those joints together, and we're done and dusted. Then the final step, which is where you wanna make sure you've got some neutral cure silicone. I've got some Bostik V60 here. I say V60 because the V4 isn't available in black. So with the Bostik neutral cure silicones, which a lot of people use on caravans and camper trailers, you've got the V4 or the V60. They're pretty much exactly the same. It's just that the V60, it comes in white and black, and the V4 is pretty much white only. So I've had this from another project. Now the other option, as long as you stick with neutral cure, is you can actually buy the little tubes as well. When we were at Cairns and we had a leak, I went and got some of that so I could just seal up the front corner of our journey, and that did the job quite well. So I actually have a little squeeze tube of black silicone in the journey that I carry around so we can, fix up any leaks that we've got along the way. But anyway, let's get back into this because this is a really cool thing that we can now fit up to the side of our journey. So let's get into it. Now, before we get into assembling all this, I forgot to mention a few other bits and pieces you get in the kit. You obviously get two of these little stainless steel screws, and they're used to mount the light fixture onto this mounting plate, which I'll show you really, really shortly. You also get two little washers. These go onto the Jayco screws, which will fix the mounting plate onto the side wall of the Caravan. And then to go over them, so they're all nicely covered, he provides these little blanking plates that pop in over the top and keep it looking all spick and span. Now, if you've installed any of Royce's 3D Print RV fridge fans, you'll know his detailed instructions are really, really good. You get a number of pages. I think there's 22 steps in this one. So you get a detailed step-by-step instruction of how to install anything that he makes, including pictures with notes, everything like that all over them, so you really can't go wrong. And that is a real helpful thing to make the installation of his products really, really easy. So now that I've got that out of the way, the first step is to get this light fixture, or more importantly, the cable here, and we feed it through the center hole on the mounting plate. You just want to feed it through like so that there's approximately 8 centimeters of cord in between the light fixture and the mounting plate itself. Now from there, we've got to start doing a little bit of silicone work. The first step is, if I pull this light fixture back out, is to put a little bit of silicone in each of these 4 holes that come on the back of the light fixture. Now we didn't do that with our Swan. This has been an update, which is part of Royce's product development over at 3DprintRV. And then what we want to do is actually put some sealant around this hole where the cable runs through, and then we can get into actually fixing this light onto the mounting plate itself. Okay, now to silicone these holes up and to do all the silicone work in reality, first thing you need is obviously that neutral cure silicone with a caulking gun. I've just got this old manual caulking gun that I used to use for work. I use a Ryobi one now, but for something like this is perfectly fine. That's all you need. Now, the one tip and trick is I say have paper towel ready, because sometimes you do make a mess, and with the black, you make a really big mess, to be honest. So you want to be really, really careful, because if you put too much on and you smear it everywhere, it's a big job to clean up. I know that because I do black silicone a fair bit, and you just have to be that little bit more pedantic when you're applying it. Otherwise, you just end up in a world of pain, unfortunately. Now, on top of that, you also want some soapy water. I've got our finishing fluid we use for work. And then I also highly recommend these little silicone finishing tools. And again, you get these from Bunnings. I'll put a full link to everything in the description below, as I do with all my videos. And you should know by now that it's also broken into chapters. So if you want to go back over a step or something like that, you can always rewind back to that point or skip forward or anything like that. But these are really, really good. And this will be perfect on the back of these. So we'll put the silicone in now, and then I can just finish them off so they're all nice and neat, because if you start shoving your finger in there, again, you'll make a big mess. So it's all about just keeping it all nice, neat and tidy. So what we'll do now is we'll put the silicone into these 4 holes and put the silicone into the other hole, assemble this all together, and then we can go out into the Caravan and do the final installation. Now, it's going to be a little bit hard to see here, but what I generally do is just squirt out a little bit of silicone so that any that's started to cure in the end of the nozzle is ready to go. And then we're going to very gently just put a little blob into each of these 4 holes. And that'll seal them up so they don't deteriorate as per Royce's instructions. Now, with these manual guns, you don't actually need to press it down. It'll generally just provide a little bit of force for these tiny little amounts that you're putting on. Last one just doesn't quite want to go in. Make sure you put your gun down so the nozzle is on some paper towel. Always rip off a few pieces of paper towel so we're ready to roll. Then it's just a case of giving this a real light spray with some soapy water. Grab your little finishing tool, spray it, and then we can gently wipe over. I give it a light spray every time. And that component is done. I'd probably just get some paper towel and just pat off some of the residual here. Just try not to get it onto the round bits where the wet silicone is still there. You want to let it cure. You need to be careful with this when you're installing it that you're not shoving your fingers on it as well. But it's on the back, so if you do mess it up a little bit, no one's ever going to see it. And now we just want to put some silicone in around this hole here where the light will mount onto. Then we'll position the light and bolt it into place. And I'm going to put some paper towel down here because I'll probably have some residual silicone, yes I do, coming out from where I've pulled the wire through to sit this light down into place. Now, while the silicone's still wet, you want to bolt this down so it's secured all neatly into place. And if you wanted to, you can even put some silicone in through the back here to make sure the hole is completely sealed. And then we just get our 2 little stainless steel screws and we want to position the light fixture onto the mounting plate. It's a simple case of putting them into the hole, like so. And the little trick here, which might have already gone in, is that you need to put the screwdriver on an angle. So don't try to screw it in from straight down like this. They actually seat in on a slight angle into this mounting plate. And again, Roy shows that in his instructions, but I'll add it into the video because it'll make it really hard to put these screws in, and you do have the potential of cross-threading them if you're trying to do it on the wrong angle. But they pretty much just drop in where they're meant to be, and then you can quickly screw it down into place. And the light is installed onto the mounting plate. I'm just going to tidy up the back. I'm actually going to put a little bit more silicone into this hole. Now the cord's pulled through where it needs to be, just to make sure we don't have any leaks in through the back of the lighting fixture itself. We tend to camp in a lot of rain, so I'm pretty aware of water ingress through different bits and pieces. So it's probably a good idea just to seal this up a little bit more, just in case. And then really we're ready to go back out to the journey. We'll wire this into place, mount it up and see how it works. I'm also going to tidy up and just wipe off any of the excess silicone that's pulled through this hole as part of the process. Last thing you want to do is get a daub of black silicone on the side wall of your Caravan. and make a real mess of it. So if you keep everything all nice, tidy and clean, you won't have any dramas at all. And just like that, we're back outside. Now, before we get distracted with all the other installation, I'm going to give this a quick spray with some isopropyl cleaning alcohol. That'll just remove any of the remnants off the side of the van and to make sure the area is prepped really well for the new silicone to go on. So it's just a case of spraying it on and giving it a bit of a wipe off. And that's done a pretty good job. Most of that is just a bit of staining that's left on the sidewall of the Caravan. There's a little bit of film here and there, but it'll be fine to bond back onto. The next step is just to strip these wire ends. Use some wire strippers. I've got these, but any normal wire strippers will do. And then I find it easier if you can set up some kind of shelf to lay the light down onto, so you've got the wiring that you can sort of then manipulate and do your connections. I might just quickly bring the ladder around. I can sit the light on one of the steps of the ladder, and then we can make these joints, and then we're ready to seal the new light fixture back onto the side of the van. So just find something that sits around about sort of this level. If you've got a low ladder, that would probably work pretty well. Ours goes up a little bit higher, so I'll position it so it doesn't affect the video too much. But really, it's nice to have a little shelf or something that you can work off when you're doing these final steps, because not only do we need to do the wiring, so which only takes 2 seconds, just sort of getting the heat gun out to shrink those joints down, but you also need to put the silicone around the back face of the light fixture itself so we can slot it back onto the side of the van. So I'm going to try the ladder and we'll see how that goes. Well, this is going to be an interesting view, isn't it? This is the best I could do because you're up as far as you can go. So, and I don't really want to mount you onto the roof of the Caravan or something bizarre like that. So I've got my light sitting here on top of the ladder, and this is the shortest tall ladder that I've got, so it'll do. It actually works pretty well. If I wasn't doing a video, it wouldn't be a big drama, because now I can link the wires up. We can make that joint. I can put the silicone around here, which maybe you'll get to see, maybe you won't. We'll see how that goes, and we can fix it onto the side with no dramas at all. So bear with me while we've got the ladder in view for a few minutes. We'll get all this buttoned up, and then I can pull this ladder away. So now we'll just put on 2 of these solder splice connections. And you can see, if you haven't seen these before, you've got the solder just in here. You've got these weatherproofing strips on the other side, and then it's generally a clear heat shrink. So these work really well. You simply slide it over your wiring so that the copper wire part is sitting on the solder joint. And then you get the one you're connecting up to it. And I just went and checked, it is red to blue and black to white, just in case you need to go back and double check as well, and you've got the same wiring as this. So now we can slot it in so it's red to blue. And sorry, that's going to be a bit of a funky view with my elbow in the corner, but now we just simply get our heat gun, or you could probably use a hairdryer if you haven't got a heat gun, and you just heat it up. And now you need to keep heating it till you see the solder starting to go out of that ring and joining the 2 wires together. We'll put the second one on now, and it's done. And now you've got 2 really good weatherproofed joints, and they're soldered as well. So we're ready to go. I can actually tuck this down into the cavity again. So we've just got the black wiring harness from the light hanging out, and then we can silicone all this up and do the final installation. Okay, now what we need to do in accordance with the instructions, so you don't have to pay too much attention to this. There's a good illustration in the instructions, is we need to run a bead of silicone all the way around the outside, around these holes, and I'm going to make sure I've got some around and inside this cavity, like what Jayco had from the factory. I'll probably actually put a little bit extra on the sides here, and I want to make sure I've got a really good layer on the inside in through here. You don't want to get it too close to that top edge, and you don't want to do it way too thick. You want to just have it as a nice little bead running through there, so that when you push it on, it's enough that it'll squish through this flat section here, but it's not going to squish out and make a great big mess on the outside of the van. If it does, I'll show you how to quickly fix that up. But again, with the black, the less mess you make, the better result you'll have. So we'll put around each of these holes on the side. I'm actually going to dollop it into the hole as well. That way when the screws go through, they'll seal it up. Then we want to wrap it in and around the inside here. Going to put a bit extra along the top here. Link it through to the hole because it can squish around in here and it's not going to make a mess. And now we're ready to mount it up into place. Now I have started tucking the wire down into the cavity here. Hopefully I can just keep doing that. And it is stuck into place. Now make sure you put your washers that come with the kit. So if you can see them here, there's a washer on the end of this screw. That's something that Royce adds into the kit. Getting silicone everywhere, it's on my fingers. And we'll just get this started. So I can go down and wipe my hands. Now having the silicone in behind the screws here will mean they will seal in as well. We're also going to put some silicone over the top, so it'll be all nicey nice from a weatherproofing point of view. So I can move this ladder away now and we can go back to our normal view. Now this is a better working angle, isn't it? Now we just screw these in. Don't have to do them in too tight. I've just snugged them up nice and firm. You don't want to strip out where they thread into the fiberglass panel itself. And you'll notice I do have a little bit of silicone just seeping out through the sides here, and that's probably because I put that little bit in between. But anyway, I'll show you how to get that off shortly. The next step is to silicone up these holes so we can put the little stoppers in. Now the same thing, you don't want to put too much into these because you're going to have a real mess on that 3D printed sort of section. You want enough just so that you can put those buttons on and they're not going to fall off. And now you've got these little screw hole plugs. I think I've called them 3 things in the space of 2 minutes here. These simply click in over the hole like so. And now we do need to tidy up this excess silicone around the outside. So they push in just like so and look pretty neat. I'm going to tidy up my hands again because I've got silicone all over myself, and then we'll clean up this silicone and see how it all works. So the same thing, we just spray this with some soapy water, and then I've got one of these silicone finishing tools and I've just cut the profiled edge off one side. So it's a nice sharp edge. And then it's just a simple case of spraying this. And then we can wipe it around. You might have to have a few goes just to tidy it up because obviously we've got some excess out here, but that gets rid of the bulk. And again, I've made it a sharp line because we don't want to, like if you're doing a bathroom or something like that, have a rounded profile around here. We want to get rid of all the silicone around the outside so it's nice, neat and tidy. My tip and trick is every time you get silicone on one of these, you've got to wipe it off with some paper towel. Don't keep going because you'll make a big mess. The next step is to turn your battery back on and the outside light. Straight away it comes on, which is a really good thing. So that means when you flick it on from inside, it'll come on with its last setting every time that you turn that on and off. So this still talks to those switches inside with no dramas at all. But the beauty is from the outside, there's all the different modes that we can now flick through. So you'll notice that there's a little green light here. When it's illuminated green, that means that it's working just as a standard light without this motion sensor. But before we get onto that, let's just go through the standard modes. So you've got a short touch and that will take you through the 3 different light modes, which is off, white, the orange, and then they both come on together to create the warm light, which is typical of all the tricolours. And then obviously off is the last in the sequence. You press it again, it goes back through, and you can cycle through them with no dramas at all. Now you've also got the long touch feature, and that adjusts the brightness. So if we hold this in, that'll make it bright, brighter again. So if I hold it again, it's going to go down to its lowest brightness, back to the middle brightness, up to the highest brightness, and then if we hold it again, it's going to take it back to the lowest brightness. Now for, I think most people, that's probably all you really need because you don't need it to be too bright. If you're having dinner or something like that, you can quickly reach up, do a long press and bump it up if you need to, just to make it a little bit brighter where you are. Now, I wish I ordered 2 of these because what I would have done is use one for a demo while we were setting all this up, but It didn't turn out too bad anyway. And if I had a second one, which I might even order from Royce over at 3DprintRV, I'd fit it to the front end of the van. But just having a light going down to where our tunnel boot slide comes out would be really, really handy. So I might talk to Royce about that, because we've got some 12 volt that runs through there. I can switch it inside, that's no drama at all. And then you can use the functions outside, and that provides a multi-use and spreads the light out. For me, being able to change it to that orange, that's the best thing ever, because you can just have this idling away and you're not attracting all those bugs, in particular mozzies and all of that, into the site during dusk and at night time, particularly when you're trying to sit outside and have a nice meal. So it just makes it a little bit easier to manage all those insects around the outside of the van. I think that's where these orange lights really, really come into play. So that is super cool. So now if we just cycle it through to turn the lamp off, to actually turn it onto the motion sensing mode where this changes to blue, we just do a long hold. And you'll see now, you probably can't on the camera, but this light on the on and off switch is now blue. So you can do all the same functions. Dim it down, dim it up, because we were in the middle dimming mode before, and it all works pretty much exactly the same. The difference here is, after a certain amount of time, it'll turn itself off and go into that PIR sort of motion sensing mode. It's really, really handy, and it's great being able to just leave this light on. It'll do its own thing. You walk away, particularly at night time. When you walk back, it'll sense and turn back on. And that's a real handy feature. And again, another reason why I'd probably want to have another one up near the front door, because it means you're not trying to get your phone torch out and jiggle with keys or anything like that if you got the van locked up. So I think this is a really, really good feature. I love the black actually. I think the black looks a lot sleeker than the white on the Swan, just because it's a nice, modern, you know, cool look that obviously goes with all the black bits on here, and the white works just as well. I just think the black looks really, really neat. So that's essentially it. This is the 3DprintRV tricolour light that retrofits onto the side of all the Jayco Caravans that run this sort of oval Narva light that most of them have. Dead easy swap over, came off with no dramas at all, which would have been the main stumbling block. You simply just join two wires together, put it all back together. A little bit of silicone, it's not all that hard, and to be honest, the neutral cures, if you do get it on your hands, is a lot easier to get off than the acidic. But you can simply just wipe it all off and you've got a really nice multi-function LED outside light that, most importantly, has that orange light function. So I hope you really enjoyed this. As I said earlier, I've got a link to Royce's product and all the other products we've used in this video in the description below. And I hope this gives a bit of a step-by-step instruction on how you go about installing this light. And really, it interfaces fine because I can go and turn this off and it'll turn off. I can turn it on from inside and it will turn on. The only big difference is, obviously, if you want to use the motion sensing, you don't want to turn it off from inside. You want to let the light do its own thing. But I like it, and I thank Royce for sending it out because it's made a really good addition to the side of the Journey. I didn't think I was going to do many modifications to it, but I've got a few coming along the line that we will do, and it's just improving the van that we've already got, making it work that little bit better. I love it exactly the way it is, to be honest. We had no need to change it, but little enhancements such as this really do go a long way and makes camping, particularly when you're out in the bush or in the summer, a little bit easier when you can change your lighting modes around with no dramas at all. But anyway, I've got to get going. I'm going to clean all this up and get on to another video I'm doing. But we're back onto the caravan and camper trailer mods. It's all happening here. I've just got to get over my sickness. I've been unwell for about a month with the flu and who knows what else, but I'm back on track. We're doing all this and I hope you really enjoy it. So as I always say, get out there, stay safe, have fun, and we'll catch you next time.